Good morning. Welcome to Daily Coffee with Carter and Carrie. Today is Wednesday, May 29th, and we are going to do another short and sweet Daily Coffee. And we thank you for joining us. And if you haven't already hit subscribe, please hit subscribe on our YouTube videos because that helps us out. And we have a subscribe star now.
Short and sweet. Yeah, we have a subscribe star. And you can have, actually, maybe I should pull our subscribe star up while I'm talking about it so I can. You have many options on subscribe star. If you become a subscribe star patron, I guess, I don't know if they call them patrons, whatever. If you become a subscribe star subscriber, you get to officially be an unperson.
And I love our tiers, guys. You can be a wrong thinker, depending on how much you give. A wrong thinker, a heretic.
Yep. So
all the way to literally Hitler.
So there's that. You know what, Carrie, I forgot to tell you before the show. You and I have talked about doing a word of the day.
Yeah.
And I found, so I have old dictionaries because that's the kind of person I am. Mm-hmm. And I found this stuffed in one of my old dictionaries. It is, I don't know if you remember these because you're about my age, right? This is the practice sheets for SAT words, for the SAT verbal.
Oh, I remember those. High school. I used to teach SAT prep. I had a bunch of those.
Yeah. So I was thinking we should go through them, but I actually looked at the first words. They're not even that exciting. Acumen, adamant, anomaly, antipathy. Yeah. It's like those aren't exciting words.
No, those are not.
We need to find better words. But if people want us to do a word of the day, let us know.
Well, we did pusillanimous, which means cowardly.
Because I want to call people pussies, which I never did after that. But I like.
Do you know the word parsimonious? I like that word a lot.
Yes. In fact, I think I actually saw that on this list. Parsimonious is good. Although I prefer to use the more triggering synonym of niggardly because it really triggers.
People will freak out. They have no idea. Oh gosh, people.
Okay. I know. Go ahead. Go tell me that's offensive. Now I'm a white supremacist because I used a vocabulary word that you don't know the origins of and don't understand.
Oh gosh.
I don't use that word. I just used it for comic effect. I just don't have a lot of opportunity to use words like parsimonious. Should we get into actually what we're trying to be short and sweet about today, Carrie? Or are you're looking off into the distance at vocabulary words?
Oh, yeah. I was looking for this one particular book I was going to show you, but I don't see it. I'll get it. I'll prepare for next time. It's a funny book.
No, okay, that's fine. Okay. This to me is a more serious topic, I think. Let's talk about Antifa. And there's an article. I'll put this article up. There's an article in Quillette today. The article is by Owen Lenahan. I think it's pronounced Owen. It's E-O-I-N, Lenahan. And it's called, "It's Not Your Imagination. The journalists writing about Antifa are often their cheerleaders." Now, you and I have talked about Antifa a little bit in the past, but maybe we should really quickly just go over what Antifa is. So Antifa it was founded, I believe, during or just prior to World War II in Europe. And in Germany, there was a rise of fascism, and it was founded by the argument at the time really was like communism versus fascism. This was how the debate was kind of couched. There was not a large freedom party presence in Germany and in Europe. So the Antifa stands for anti-fascist, and it was Marxists who opposed the rise of fascism. And eventually, obviously, they didn't oppose it well enough in Germany. And Antifa ended up spreading out throughout Europe over the years. It's in the US now. And it's important to understand a few things. First of all, Antifa, they redefine words. So when they talk about things, you think it makes sense because the words they're using don't sound that bad. But in reality, that is not, they don't mean what you think they mean. And all you have to do to find that out is I read the Antifa handbook, and they're very clear about what they mean in the Antifa handbook. They just know that only people really interested are going to read the Antifa handbook. Most of those people are going to join Antifa, and they want to be violent and promote Marxism. But the rest of us are just going to hear them talk about being anti-fascist, and we're going to nod our heads and go, well, yes, I'm anti-fascist. Antifa sounds like a reasonable thing. But that is, first of all, they don't mean when they say anti-fascist, their definition of fascism, and I'm not being hyperbolic, this is from their handbook. Anything that's not a form of Marxism is fascism. That is their definition. So when they call themselves Antifa, they're pro-Marx, they're Marxifa, whatever they are. I don't know. That's not a good phrase. I don't know. They're pro-Marx instead of anti-fascist. That's what they are. So they're they're just a pro-Marxism group. And they also use language that makes it sound, well, first of all, they redefine things like violence. So they say, as we've talked about before, right? Words are violence. Hate speech is violence, blah, 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 blah. And so what they will say is, well, yes, there was a violent confrontation at this rally that Antifa showed up in, but it was the far right who initiated violence. We were just responding. But the facts on the ground usually go something like this. Someone they don't like speaks, they hit that person with a bike lock, or someone listening to them with a bike lock. So to them, the violence has been started by the person on the right because they said things that were mean or that they disagreed with. But the layman's definition of violence and the actual real definition of violence is almost always started by Antifa. They show up and they throw bricks, hit people with sticks, hit people with bike locks, and generally attack people, throw M80s into crowds. This is what they do, and they don't think that's violence. They think anything that this is another, you got to understand their philosophy. Anything they do to oppose fascism, which again is non-Marxism, anything that they do to oppose non-Marxists is free expression and defense. At worst, it's self-defense as far as they're concerned. So, because they think everyone is literally Hitler. So why not kill Hitler now while he's, saying to vote for a policy you don't like? Because really, someday in the future, he'll be gassing Jews. So that justifies killing him. That's their mentality about everyone who disagrees with them. And so they use this language as if they aren't the ones instigating violence, but they are the ones that are initiating the use of force. And actually, the phrase they use is direct action. They encourage direct action. Direct action means hitting people with bricks. That's what direct action means in Antifa parlance. So that's what Antifa is. Carrie, do you have anything to add about Antifa?
I have a lot to add about Antifa. Being someone who is from the left and who was in the SJW left for as long as I was, for about 20 years, they infuriate me. And I think it is the responsibility of people on the left to call out our crazies and our extremists and the violent people in our midst the same way we would expect people on the right to do it for theirs. And so I get a ton of pushback from people on the left who, when I first started, my beliefs started changing after the election, I started seeing all the violence that was being committed by people on my side. And I started kind of speaking, I was more meek back then, I guess, about like, hey guys, I don't know if this is cool. I have an opinion. But I got a lot of pushback, and I still get pushback from people who are like, they think I must be on the right, or why do you always criticize the left? Why do you always criticize Antifa? 2 reasons. Set your own house in order. And that just doesn't have to do with the individual, but it has to do with your side. I'm not on the right. I can talk about the alt-right and criticize them, but I'm not deeply familiar with them, and they don't represent me in any way. Antifa does, or they claim to. And they are basically, when I talk about SJW ideology and alt-left ideology, it's the belief system, it's the ideology that undergirds not just Antifa, but what has now become a lot of the mainstream left, at least in terms of, I say mainstream meaning people who have the loudest voices in academia, in politics, in social media companies, in entertainment and all that stuff. So this ideology undergirds it. Antifa is like the fist for that ideology. And they all support it. A lot of them support it. Not all of them. A lot of them support it. And like you said, you'll see the media. I just sent you a couple links. One of them is,
I can show it. Which one do you want me to show?
Show the article about that CNN boob who said, yeah.
Yeah. Antifa is a good cause, he says.
Yeah, he scroll down to what he actually said. They took that sentence, but I want people to see it in context.
Okay. You ready? You can talk about Antifa. I've watched them in streets protesting in different situations, okay? Cuomo said. There are certainly aspects of them that are true to a cause. That is a good cause. They want social justice. They want whatever they want in that context.
This is exactly what you just said. They try and paint themselves as being anti-fascist. So idiots like this guy will...
He is functionally retarded, Chris Cuomo.
People like this will take them, they're just against fascism, and then hope that people believe that. That is not what they are. They're fascists. Like the way look at the way someone behaves. Don't look at what they say. What's their behavior? They support violence. They support censorship. They support, like Carter said, like throwing bricks, hitting you with bike locks. And you get people like this. So not just that, but there was another CNN guy, it might've been the same dude, who there was where they said that they were defending the violence of Antifa. And they said that not all punches are equal, that some punches are necessary.
Some punches are more equal than others.
Yeah, some punches are more equal than others. I think that's what they said, which is crazy. They're defending violence.
They recognize what they're quoting and the context, right? To me, that's just really funny. That quote is not a honorable quote from Animal Farm, right?
No, they don't realize what they're quoting, but they are supporting violence. I know we've mentioned this before, but there's a picture. See if you can find that photo. Keith Ellison, DNC. Keith Ellison taking a selfie with the Antifa handbook and posting it on Twitter. You would never see someone on the right. So here's a difference. There's a couple differences between the alt-left and the alt-right, between Antifa and the white nationalists. On the one hand, they're united in a lot of ways. Look at that.
There's Keith Ellison with the Antifa handbook, right? And the Antifa handbook, like I said, it's pretty radical. It promotes violence and it promotes the idea that anyone who's not a Marxist is a fascist and they should be violently overthrown. And it defends the idea that all of the use of force by Antifa, the initiation of the use of force by Antifa, is somehow defense, because everyone who's not a Marxist is literally Hitler. That's the book.
That's the book. And you would never see somebody on the right doing the equivalent of that. In fact, the right, this is one of the differences. The right calls out their crazies. The right condemns them. Trump condemns them. I don't care if you believe that lie that he did not. He's repeatedly over and over belabored the point of condemning white nationalists and the alt-right. People on the left do not equally, in a good measure, they do not condemn the alt-left, which they should be doing. Every once in a while, you'll see someone who does. I think Robert, is it Robert Reich? Is that his name? I always forget this guy's name. Yeah. Okay. So he actually criticized them once, and I was so encouraged by that. I'm like, okay, good. Well, there are some leaders on our side who are starting to call out this crazy nature instead of endorsing it, because most of what you see is them doing these, what Chris Cuomo or whatever is doing, which is like kind of justifying it, like soft justification for it, or openly embracing it like Keith Ellison is doing. And so one of the differences is the left doesn't call it out as much. And the other difference is that it is so much bigger and more, the alt left is much bigger, more dangerous, because its influence, because of the big influence, than the alt-right. The alt-right is minuscule. Wasn't there a KKK rally that just happened and there were like 20 people there or something ridiculous?
Yeah,
Like,
here's this test. You can go to any party, any gathering, any event in Silicon Valley or probably elsewhere in the country. I'll just talk about where I know. And if you say, oh, I'm in Antifa or I like Antifa, no one will bat an eye.
yeah.
But if you say, I don't know, but I assume if you were to say, I like the KKK, you would probably be thrown out physically and like your life would be destroyed. I mean, because
As you should be, but both of that should happen to Antifa people too.
Right.
And it doesn't happen to Antifa people. They don't treat Antifa people the way they treat the white nationalists, and they should. They're equally abhorrent.
The KKK is my favorite analogy for Antifa because the KKK was the violent arm of the Democratic Party. That's how it started, because the Democrats couldn't go around being violent to black people like they wanted to be. Because remember, the Democrats were anti-black. They were pro-slavery. It was the Republicans who were, I'm not a Republican. This isn't a rally call for Republicans. I'm just saying, historically, it was the Democratic Party. They wanted Jim Crow laws. They wanted to keep the freed slaves down and out of politics and out of society. And they couldn't do that legitimately as a political party. So the KKK was their kind of militant arm of the Democratic Party. Antifa is the modern day equivalent of the KKK. It's the same thing. They want to smash people that they don't like. They want to shut people up that they don't like. They want Marxism. They want to shut up anyone who's advocating for free speech or anything else. But they can't, Chris Cuomo can't come out and say we shouldn't have free speech and we should shoot anyone who disagrees with us or hit them with bike locks. But he can say Antifa is a good cause. And the difference between Antifa and the KKK is that Antifa is not vilified and Antifa is socially acceptable. And that's a huge, huge difference. Imagine the KKK being socially acceptable and living in that world.
You can't imagine it.
With respect to Antifa.
By the way, they both wear masks too. Like super cowardly KKK and Antifa.
Masks. Well, yeah. Antifa wears masks because they don't want to be doxxed.
Well, also because they're friggin' cowards. They can't stand out there with their face doing what they're doing because part of them knows that what they're doing is foul. And you don't want to have your face out there. If you're proud and you don't have, look, you and I could be doxxed just because we criticize the SJW left. Like, it's like, right. But I stand by what we do every day. And if I go to a protest, it's like, I am there because I believe in the reason why I'm there. They wear a mask because when I see those little punks, that's a better word than what I was thinking of. When I see them wearing, those masks, it's like, you are using this to cover up like a really murderous, dark rage within you. Like, you pretend that this is some valiant thing that you're doing, that this is noble and that you're out there fighting against fascism. No, you are using this as a mask to enact violent things that you want to do. There is a darkness inside of you that you are feeding, and you're doing it in the guise of, oh, but I'm doing something good. No, you're not. You're enacting and you're behaving in an evil way. And it doesn't matter what you say your just ends are, you're behaving in an evil way, and you're enjoying, and there's a part of you that enjoys it. That's what makes me sick about them.
Oh, they love it. You can see them get off on it. They love it.
Oh, and they totally get off on it.
Just to be clear, even there's a lot of people in Antifa who wear the masks and wear all they look like the violent people, but they're not violent. They don't want to be the violent ones. But Antifa is relatively well organized. It's not centrally organized in the sense that there are cells that kind of operate independently in many ways, but they are organized in the sense that they know exactly what they're doing. So what they do is they have I think they call it the green block. These are all the people who dress in the black. They wear the masks, but they're not going to do violence. They're just the mass crowd who's going to kind of stand back and yell and protest and have signs. And then there's the black block. The black block comes out of the green block, hits people with bike locks, beats people over the head with sticks, but they retreat back into the green block, and the green block provides cover for them so that you can't tell who it was in that massive crowd. They're intentionally trying to obfuscate who was the attacker. And so the black block sits back, they hide in anonymity, they run forward, beat you over the head, and then run back into the green block. So now you've kind of lost them in the sea of people. And the people who weren't originally being violent, they just kind of they form a protective circle basically around, or they let them get absorbed into the amoeba-like mass, and you can no longer find the individual who propagated the violence. I mean, obviously, cameras and cell phone coverage have helped, and some people have been identified and prosecuted. But
look up Eric Clanton for people who don't know who he is. He's the professor, Antifa member who did what Carter's just talking about. He was in a mask. He came forward. He hit a Trump supporter, some kid, over the head with a bicycle lock, and thought he would get away with it. Like shrunk back into the crowd, but people online did. They took but they took the photos, and they took photos and video footage from lots of different Antifa rallies, and they did some kind of facial recognition software, and they figured out who it was, and they helped the cops get this guy. And last I can't remember if he's already been convicted or not. But look, the mainstream left.
What his status was. I thought maybe he got off, but I don't remember.
The mainstream left rallied around him in the Bay Area. They were like, they didn't see that he had done anything wrong. You can watch the video of him assaulting this guy, and the blood, like it's horrifying. And they think that's okay because he's on the side of justice. And I can't remember what he taught, but I think he taught a class that was kind of ironic considering what that he's out in the streets, like bashing people over the head. But okay. So I also have a personal thing about Antifa.
Well, we haven't even gotten into our main story yet. Should we get into that?
What's the main story?
The main story is the article by this guy.
Oh.
Okay. So we kind of totally forgot this.
I have a lot of things to say about Antifa.
Yeah. Well, let's at least quickly touch on it. So there's been this feeling, we'll say, among people, or conclusion based on anecdotal evidence of like, hey, it seems like the mainstream media is really pro-Antifa. And this guy, Owen Lenahan, wrote this article in Quillette. It's not your imagination. The journalists writing about Antifa are often their cheerleaders. And he, along with a colleague, he did a study where he created a data set of 58,000 Antifa or Antifa-associated Twitter accounts based on follows of 16 verified Antifa accounts. Then he used some software to kind of analyze the nature of the connections and winnow it down to 962 accounts. Then they went through those 962 and found which ones actually were like journalists, verified. 22 were verified journalists, 15 of whom work for regular national level news outlets. So then he went through and figured out, okay, well, what's the nature of their reporting about these people? And you can read this article. We'll put a link to this article below. But he goes through a couple examples. This guy, Patrick Strickland, he mentions this other guy, Jason Wilson, one of the reporters, and another one he calls out specifically is Emily Gorsensky. And so he goes through and he notes that these reporters whitewash the violence that Antifa commits. They're basically embedded with Antifa. This is Jason Wilson next to one of the Antifa guys who, the Antifa doesn't let reporters in, but they do let these people in, these reporters. And these journalists basically don't have anything negative to say about Antifa. They whitewash the Antifa violence, and they paint a narrative of, well, both sides were violent and blah, blah, blah. They are part of Antifa in a very real way, and yet they're treated like mainstream journalists. So these are people who write for Huffington Post and The Guardian and those kind of publications, and they're not even trying to be objective journalists, but they're treated as if they're journalists. And so basically the point of this article is what you felt or what you thought might be true, which is the mainstream media has ties to Antifa, and they whitewash what Antifa does, and they are basically the PR arm of Antifa, is true. They are the PR of Antifa. They are out lying about Antifa and trying to spread Antifa propaganda by using the language and the narrative that Antifa wants, citing Antifa people as experts without mentioning that they're Antifa people. And I think this has got people pissed off. But worse than that, I don't know, worse. In addition to this, the article comes out, and bam, what happens? The guy's Twitter, Dr. Lenahan's Twitter account got suspended within hours of this article coming out. So this guy's account now is suspended.
I'm not surprised.
I don't know what the justification, I haven't found out what the justification that Twitter gave was, but.
Well, so it's not just the media, it's everyday people. Okay, the media is bad enough. I mean, the media is horrible that they are in bed with this fascist extremist group that pretends to be anti-fascist. But then they get, because they're in bed with them, and they kind of downplay it and make it seem like it's not that big of a deal. You get, I mean, one of the friends that I first lost when my opinion started changing was a good friend who got really upset because I was criticizing Antifa and also get this, you're talking about the handbook and how, I mean, they admit that they're Marxists. Yeah. When I was talking about Marxism and communism, a lot of everyday people are like, they'll laugh at you because they don't know enough about the history. They, just like SJWs, don't even realize that their ideology is a form of Marxism. They're like, communism, what are you crazy? What are you talking about? It's like, and so this friend got really upset, and it's like unfriended me because her uncle's a member of Antifa, and because she thought it was crazy that I was trying to connect Antifa to Marxism and communism. It's like, no, but that's what they are.
Manual.
Read the manual, yes. But like really butthurt about it. And so everyday people like her, like they defend this stuff. And there is because the media creates the narrative that a lot of us believe in, they've created this false narrative that the alt-right is huge and influential, and it's not. Now, granted, I do believe it's been growing in the past couple of years, in part because of that media narrative and because of the tacit support of the alt-left. Like, these two factions need each other. The alt-left, Antifa, needs the alt-right. That's how they recruit. It's like this boogeyman over here we're going to tell you about, so we get your support. And probably vice versa as well. But alt-left is what's huge, and they have mainstream support. And it's not just the media, it's entertainers. Like, so I used to work in comedy. As some of you know, I was a comedy manager. I managed, not exclusively, but I managed a lot of comedians who shared my SJW ideology. A lot of them support Antifa tacitly or outright. A lot of them talk about, I lost some comedian friends, again, a couple years ago when I first started speaking out, because they were defending this whole punch a Nazi thing, and they were simultaneously defining Nazi as anyone who supported Trump. That's insane. You can't, you're doing the two things side by side. You're saying fascists or Nazis are 63 million people who voted for Trump, and that it's okay to target those people for violence. And I know comedians who were doing that. A couple of the worst offenders, like, I mean, there are a lot of them, but I guess I shouldn't name names. But
hey, I've got no problem with you naming names.
Well, one of the ones I used to like
Kristina Wong supports Antifa.
Probably. I love Kristina though, and Kristina was one of my clients, and I mean, she does this really, like, Carter has criticized this, and I haven't, just because I'm friends with Kristina, but I do believe, and I believe she's got her heart in the right place. But she does this children's show called Radical Cram School, which is basically this it's identitarian Marxism. But no, she's not one of the ones I'm talking about. Keith Lowell Jensen, he's an atheist comedian from the Bay Area. Yep. He was so adamantly and passionately supporting punching people and supporting violence. And he ended up blocking me or unfriending me, I guess. But I was blown away. He was one of the first people that kind of made me just really take a hard look at who was on my side, because I couldn't believe what he was condoning in public posts about, attacking people. My old client, W. Kamau Bell, who's on the CNN show 50 Shades of Grey, 50 Shades of Grey.
Ah.
Wait a minute.
Freudian slip and insight into Carrie's love life.
No, this is what's so funny.
Here on Covfefe.
No. But this is funny because the show is called United Shades of America, but I wanted to call it 50 Shades of America because I thought that was a funny pun. So in my mind, I still think of the show as 50 Shades of America. I was like, let's call it that. He's on a show called United Shades of America on CNN. And someone just sent me a clip of he spoke at this basically Antifa supporting rally that was against one of the Patriots for Prayer rallies in the Bay Area. Now, I don't know if you guys know about the Patriots for Prayer, but they're a lot of they're Trump supporters, and they're all about like, let's get together and support, unity. This is what they talk about. Watch their videos. If all you know about them is what the mainstream media has told you, like, you don't know enough. So it was started by men of color. Joey Gibson, look up Joey Gibson, look up Will Johnson.
They're not white.
They're not white, and they're not white supremacists, and they don't preach white supremacy. However, they pray, which is offensive in the Bay Area, I guess. So, and they support Trump, and they're people of color who support Trump. So that's offensive to white liberals. So anyway, they, ahead of one of their rallies in the Bay Area, Nancy Pelosi and a couple of other government officials called them white supremacists in the press. And I at the time, I'm like, and Will Johnson did a video about it. And he's like, they're inviting violence against us by calling us that. Like, why would you call us that? And sure enough, there was a huge Antifa attack on them. It was one of those skirmishes that you saw in the press where you can watch video of Antifa, not just attacking them. There's a video of Antifa attacking Joey Gibson, but you can watch Antifa attacking members of the press, taking their cameras away from them, beating them up. But yeah, my former client, comedian Debbie Kamau Bell, spoke at this rally and was calling the Patriot Prayer Rally guys white nationalists or Nazis or what they do. And somebody sent me this thing where recently, because that was a while back, where recently he, I guess he got upset because Tucker Carlson had done a piece like kind of calling him out for that. Like, why is this CNN host supporting Antifa? And he just did a piece where he went and sat down with and did an interview with an Antifa member, but like a really kind of putting a nice face on it,
Sure.
Yeah, like, now, granted, the first I was working
KKK members enjoy
well, he
walks on the beach and
actually, Carter, let me interrupt, because he did do the pilot episode we ever did of that show was, and I was working with him then, was he sat down and talked to the KKK. So he's not and that was a great episode too. It's like he's not being a hypocrite in that way, but it is like, that he doesn't agree with the KKK, and he makes that very clear. You don't know that about Antifa. In fact, it seems that in this piece that I saw, that he supports them, and he's not the only one. There's a ton of comedians who do, and I'm sure a lot of them are just going along with it because that's what the echo chamber does. And others do have good intent. I know I've said this before, but there are others who just, they enjoy, like the Keith Lowell Jensen guy, who seem to just enjoy the idea of people who disagree with them being physically hurt. And I don't know, I'm going off on a tangent here, but yeah, it's comics too. It's the comedian thing is one. There's a guy in LA, I don't know this comedian, but I think he's one of the worst offenders I've seen online. Josh Androsky. That dude blocked me, so I can't see what he talks about anymore. But he's horrible. He's like a total hypocrite. He like organizes groups of Antifa supporting alt-left believing people to go after and physically confront Proud Boys, and he's everything he claims to be against.
The last thing he tweeted was this Soviet propaganda piece. I don't know if he's doing it ironically. It says, "Collective farmer, become an athlete." It's a weird guy.
It is a religion for a lot of these people. And okay, so here's my personal story with Antifa and the media. This also involves CNN. I sent you some images. In 2017, in the fall of 2017, there were some people in the new right who had been organizing these protests against Google, and one of them was the guy Jack. I don't know how to say his last name. Prasobiak. Prosobiec.
Yeah.
And so they didn't have anyone in Austin, and I got in touch with them and I was like, I'll host the one in Austin. And I'm not even on the right. Like I was going to host it with a group I had started called Liberals for Free Speech, which is kind of funny because liberals should be for free speech. But
You need a separate group for that now, Carrie.
yeah, I need to say explicitly we are liberals for free speech. So I was organizing that, and with some of the people who come to my civility dinners, we were going to do a rally at Google here in Austin. And I did my own separate group for the Austin one, like promotion on Facebook and whatever. My focus on it was a little bit different than theirs. I think some of the other cities and some of the people on the right, they were focusing on conservatives being silenced or deplatformed perhaps on YouTube. I'm not sure. But my focus was on James Damore because that had just happened.
Oh,
and
yeah.
and I thought that it really showed, here's a word of the day, what a panopticon of fear and self-censorship Google was, where you had to have one belief system or risk being fired, like James Damore was. And I have a lot of reasons, as you know, to be concerned about the power of Google and about their ideological stance and their penchant for censorship and manipulating algorithms. And so we were planning a march for Google here in Austin. So then next thing I know, CNN runs a hit piece, and the headline, which I think you can show, is...
Yeah, here's the headline. White nationalists are planning 9 rallies nationwide this weekend alone. And then they list you, Carrie. Well, not you by name, but
they list my...
Austin. That's you. March on Google. So you are a white nationalist, apparently.
A white nationalist. So after that came out, people went and looked for the Facebook events, the groups for these rallies. And I started getting a deluge of hate mail and posts from people calling me and the group white nationalists and alt-right, which wasn't even true. I'm like, hey, we're liberals organizing the Austin one. Hey. But it didn't matter. And and one of these guys, we had like mutual friends. And I was like, dude, like, ask your friends. They know me. Like, I'm not whatever it is you think I am. This guy was just dead set on believing I was a white nationalist. And CNN did a correction where they changed the headline to alt-right. And I was like, hey, that's still not true. Like, still not true, guys. Nobody ever called us. Nobody ever talked to the Austin organizers. No, nothing happened. Nothing happened in terms of actual journalism. They just did a total hit piece. And then the decision was made from the person, from Jack or whoever was organizing overall these rallies, to cancel them because people started sending in death threats and saying that if we did these rallies, they were going to take cars and drive them into our groups and kill us. And so we had to cancel the Austin one as well. But hey, look, does CNN lie? Does CNN, stand on the side of Antifa? Yes, and I have a personal example.
Yeah. And that, just to be clear, that guy, is it the Charles Levine who wrote the Not So Dead book? I don't know who he is, but the author here, I'll put the name up. I haven't researched him, but Charles Levine is the guy who wrote this for CNN. But CNN's responsible, especially because I assume after you complained, he was not the only one involved in the decision to correct the title, and they changed it to alt-right. And no one said, hey man, how about you talk to the people here?
Yeah. How about you find out who's actually organizing these things before you sick a bunch of hateful, violent Antifa people on them?
Right. Or not. What the hell, CNN?
That's a lot of, I feel like you do a lot of rants, but I just did a long...
No, it's good. I don't think short and sweet was the right way to describe this episode, but and it was an anti-Antifa episode, I guess, and just to educate people. And I will link to some of the stuff we talked about below. I think we actually also have I think I might have done a show after reading Antifa Handbook at some point describing what was in it. I don't remember. If I did, I'll link to it. Anything else you want to add, Carrie, or any, before we wrap it up, anything else you want to add?
I like that you say anti-Antifa. That's pretty cool. No, I mean, I think they're abhorrent, and I think it's obvious if you step back and pay attention that they have broad mainstream support on the left, in the media, in entertainment, at the social media companies. And if you're on the left, I mean, I think what greater responsibility do you have than to call out the extremists on our side? Like, that's what you should be doing. Anybody and everybody can sit and point fingers at the right and talk, and that's what most people I see my leftist world doing, is just constantly like Trump this and that, and the boogeyman of the 25 KKK people. But like, hey, there's this actual growing horrific belief system and people who are willing to violently and like push it and carry it out because of that belief system, who are willing to be violent against those who disagree with them. Maybe talk about that.
Yeah, they're a much bigger threat than, the handful of white nationalists that everyone thinks are crazy.
Yeah, who are crazy, and nobody nobody on the mainstream level supports. Yeah.
All right. Well, on that note, please hit the subscribe button. Thanks for watching, and we will talk to you tomorrow. Oh, can we say who we have on tomorrow? I think we can. No?
Oh, yeah, I'm super excited.
Go ahead. You're excited.
James Lindsay.
Not that I'm excited, but I'm also
excited too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So James Lindsay, along with Helen Pluckrose, who I adore her writing, and who's the Peter Boghossian? Is that how you say his last name?
Something like that. Yeah.
The three of them are the ones who the grievance study guys, the ones who sat and wrote these ridiculous academic papers that about like I guess like trans dogs, and I don't know, it was like ridiculous stuff based in this belief system, and they got published.
Yeah, they did it as a test to see if
they did it as
the crap that they put together, and of course the journals did. So
yeah.
So we'll have him on tomorrow. So
Hey.
yeah. All right. Thanks everyone. See you next time.